opening up our live stream.
Sorry.
It was so good. Oh no.
She's like, let's go, Patrick.
Yeah, let's go. All right. So welcome to episode 5 of Cast of the Archons, a Keyforge live cast. That's what I call it, a live cast, because we do record live on YouTube every other week. So people can jump in, join us, hang out and chat. And also, I know most of you just listen on your favorite podcast app on iTunes or Pocket Casts or whatever. I'm not trying to. Nobody sponsors us, so I'm not going to name names. But you know, cool. So my name is Patrick. If this is your first time joining Cast the Archons, we basically cover all things Keyforge. Today we have something really special prepared for you. We have an interview with Brad. That if you're watching on YouTube already happened, and if you are joining us via podcast is about to happen here in the near future for you. So I thought that went really well. What do you guys think? Good times?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Super guy.
And I am joined by Chris. Chris, say hi.
How's it going, everybody?
Audrey.
Hello.
And Matt.
What's up from Canada?
All right. We have we really hit almost the entire North American, at least the upper North American continent with the 4 of us, which is pretty nice. So it's pretty sweet. All right. So we have a lot to cover this episode. You know, what's funny is I think 2 weeks ago we talked about how there was almost nothing to talk about. And I don't know if
that was still like a 2-hour podcast.
Yeah, it was still 2 hours.
We're in trouble today.
I don't know if FFG was listening, but they're like, "Oh, really? Oh, really? You need something to talk about? We got you. We got you." So first, we're going to be covering the news, of which there is quite a bit to talk about, especially with all the Time of Triumph announcements. Then, for those of you listening on the podcast, will be the interview with Brad, which I think you're really going to enjoy. I thought it was really fun to hang out with him. He was fantastic. And then we're going to cover a big new rules update that like stealthily showed up on the internet one day that had a lot of important stuff in there. And then maybe Chris has some scary Archon names to reveal to all of us, and then we're going to close the episode. So welcome. I'm really happy to have everybody here. So starting with the news, Time of Triumph. What is Time of Triumph? What the heck am I talking about right now? For those people who have not heard. Anybody?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Well,
all right. Well,
We're not sure what this is.
at least one of us on this podcast pays attention to.
Yeah, I mean, I read it, but I'm a little bit confused as I guess it's the next quarterly set, the next set.
Yeah,
of
I think it's the
tournaments.
next phase. It seems like they're doing the game in phases, and connected to each phase are events and other things attached to it, which I think is a really interesting way to do it because it creates a connection, I guess you could say, between all the different events going on. But woo-wee, this is a big one. This is like all the things that I think all the way back in episode 1, me and Chris were trying to think about and plan for and explaining what the heck this pyramid of organized play was and that kind of stuff. So here we are. We have it. So there were a couple of big things. I'll put in the show notes the link to the article. But one big one was seasonal kits for what they called open play nights, which I don't think I'd heard about before. And it seems like it's different than the normal like weekly events. But rather that there would just be these sort of nights, maybe a second night at stores or something where you just go and there's no tournament, there's no rankings, you just show up and you start playing. Is that kind of the feeling you guys got from the article, or?
Yeah, I mean, in other games, the other FFG games, they have their seasonal kit, so they have a quarterly kit that comes out, and I feel like that's sort of the role these are trying to fill, and you can kind of give those away in different ways. I know some communities do a single tournament for that kit, while other communities do run a league that's like 6 weeks, and you play some games every week for those.
Well, it sounds like in the seasonal kit, there's multiple event-related things connected, and so one of them are the open play nights, and it sounded like that stores had the option to use that for their chainbound events, or they could just do these other open play nights where I think people just showed up. I don't totally understand it. Maybe we should have asked Brad about it, actually. But but it sounds really unstructured and like just relaxed, like show up, play some Keyforge. But one interesting they mentioned is they say that you'll be able to get new cards. New cards is what they say as prize at these open play nights. What do you think that means, new cards?
Well, I think that actually has something to do with what we're playing right now. Like at our store, some of the prizes that we have are stun and damage cards instead of like specific tokens, and they're a lot smaller than normal. So maybe that's something they're moving forward with, or maybe I mean, we're already seeing brand new chain cards and stuff like that. So it's kind of crazy what they could be doing, because.
So you're thinking more of these new cards are probably like accessory cards, not anything to do with your actual deck?
Maybe, because it's we've talked about this in the past, where it can seem a little bit harder to just put promo cards just because of the special deck names. But at the same time, you can, if you go to a structured tournament, it's like, let a judge know, hey, I have this promo card in my deck. Like it's real, it's not fake. It's something along to that extent. So it's really interesting how that's actually going to move forward in the time of Triumph.
We'll see. I think that's a safe bet, Audrey. That's probably right. Is more likely than not they're accessory cards. But I just found that wording, new cards, very interesting, especially because I think Matt had this idea that you could still have promo cards. And since at full level tournaments, everything's sleeved anyways, those promo cards could still go into your deck. And so when I read that, I thought, is there a chance Matt is right?
I feel like they would be extremely limiting themselves in terms of what they could offer in their kits and their prize pools if they didn't do alt art cards simply because of this unique deck thing. Again, like your Archon card is mandatory at every event. So what's the difference if one of them has a different art and you still have 36 cards in there? So you're not adding a card. You're just replacing one,
Yeah, it would be really interesting to see maybe Maverick cards or something, like something that's a little bit different than from what's actually generated into decks. It's like, here's a card that you actually cannot get in a deck. You have to win it at a tournament.
Right.
But at the same time, that would almost negate back.
Yeah, they're kind of like,
but hard to say.
So the second thing they mentioned are chain-bound events, which is something I think we've all been waiting for. We knew it was coming. And we talk about this quite a bit, actually, with Brad when we do the interview with him. But these are once per week events at stores, and you gain amber shards by attending these events, which is pretty cool. I've always been a fan, or theory crafted a little bit as a game store owner, about the idea of more and more digital prizing for people coming to in-store events that can then be turned around into something else. I just think that's a really interesting way to go for the future of local game stores for prizing of events. And so you'll be able to gain these amber shards. And the way it's described is it's competitive. I'd say it's competitive-ish in that it is a tournament structure. Like you have rounds, you are playing people, but decks are chain-bound. So it's not so competitive that anybody can't just walk in, buy a deck, and jump in and start playing. What do you guys? We've thought about this a lot. What do you, now that we know this is what's happening, what do you guys think about that?
I guess all we really know is that, like, when and how often it'll be happening. We still don't know the how. So that's still, for me, the big question mark.
I'm kind of curious. I wonder if there are going to be some stores or some people that are very resistant to the idea of their events being chain-bound. And also, I'm curious how enforced it will be by FFG. I don't know. I just think it's really interesting because it seems like events are going to be logged in some fashion into this greater app by the stores. I'm curious how everything connects together and what level of control Fantasy Flight plans to have over in-store events and how much they just don't care. So we have those chain-bound events, but another thing that is very clear from this is the opposite, and that is that only store level events are chain bound, which means once you kind of move beyond these weekly events, decks don't have chains, which is I think a really important thing to note.
Yeah, it seems kind of odd that they would put chains on them for local events, but then I mean, I understand why they would take them off as you increase, but then when they say, you know, we're not going to mess with chains after that, it kind of takes the teeth out of the chaining system to some extent.
Yeah, I can see how that is true. And then the next level is kind of what I think, Chris, you were getting at, the seasonal premium kits. Now, I don't know if these all come in the same kit, but it seems like maybe they do. And those are for a standalone one-off event. I assume since it's called seasonal, it'll be one for every year. And they will have custom Keyforge prizes, which that word custom also grabbed my attention. Just because we've already seen, like, for example, for these retailers who are setting up for Gamma, how they're getting like custom decks, that kind of thing. So custom Keyforge prizes, I'm just wondering what that could be. And then that these events will be themed around a specific house. What do you guys think about?
I think that's very cool. The fact that it's themed around a specific house, that'll, as Brad mentioned in the interview, which you guys will hear shortly, he talked about how, you know, even a specific card or a specific play style may appeal to one person or a group of people. And I think that's really cool about these events. Like, you know, when they have a specific event, whether it's, you know, some of my favorite houses, I'm going to be way more inclined to make it out. And you know, and if I miss it, I'm going to be bugging my buddies who went, like, try to get my hands on some of the stuff. So it just adds another layer of fun and interesting side of the game, which is, you know, at the end of the day, it is trading and collecting and owning these things that are super fun and unique to you.
Yeah, that's kind of how they've done, I think, L5R and Thrones. A lot of times each season kind of is themed around a different house or whatever. So it kind of makes sense that they would do that. I'll be curious. Yeah, I'll just be curious to see how that works out. And then they really lay out the bigger picture, which is, I think, what a lot of the community have been waiting for, of, okay, I get the store level. What is beyond that store level? And so what they say is there will be seasonal kits, chain-bound events is the bottom level. Then you go into store championships, which that is a different wording than seasonal premium kits. So those seem like those might be two different things. Then there are what are called prime championships, which they said is like similar to a regional, I believe, in caliber. And then it goes to grand championships, which I don't know what that, where that fits and everything.
I believe grand championships are like continentals for their other games, so it'll be North America, Europe.
Oh yeah, it says like once per nation or territory, so it's like nationals basically. Okay. Grand championships and then world championships, and so we'll get into a little bit deeper into world championships, but at least now we have the lay of the land of how everything is going to connect together. And so we see the new organized play pyramid, which I think this is the direction all the games for FFG organized play are kind of going. Some of them were already close to it as is, but it seems like this is just the general direction everything's going. And then they mentioned the Vault Tour, which we'll get to a little bit more in a minute, but they mentioned there's a prize wall at the Vault Tour, which is just I think a big wall of different prizes that you can exchange Amber Shards for. And then that this is really important because I don't know that we knew this for sure or clearly before. The chains and also the power level of a deck sticks to the deck and not to the player. So what that means is that if I have a deck with so many chains and it's like power level 3 or whatever, and I trade that to another player, it maintains that power level. It maintains those chains. Which I think is, well, what do you guys think? Do you think that is a good idea? Do you think that works correctly?
I actually really like that idea because I think it makes sense. You do have different players all the time. Like you can give the same deck to 2 different people and they may play it a little bit differently just from their own knowledge. But based on how that deck itself performs is something that you really have to keep an eye on. You have to keep an eye on your players as well, but any player can get better at the game or learn new strategies and stuff. So I think it's a good idea to keep a power level or a chain level to a specific deck instead of a specific person, because that wouldn't. It's like, oh, I'm a power 9 player with a deck that that does almost nothing. So it just it can do some weird things. So
what do you think this means for the secondary market, since you're our secondary market expert?
That's interesting. Like, when you're selling your deck or trading your deck, this is a power 9 deck. Therefore, it's worth X amount. Maybe it means that really good players will be able to bump their decks up really high and sell them and make good money on the secondary market. I don't know. That's just a thought that came to me just now. But
potentially their decks will be worse, not better, because they'll be more powerful, right?
Will they be worse? How will they be worse if they're more powerful?
With more chains is, I think, what he's getting
for
at.
your local event. Yeah,
sure, yeah. But I mean, you bring that deck that starts with 9 chains, and you get destroyed for 3 weeks in a row, and then it loses all its chains. But the power level sticks, right? So that's the part that's going to be interesting. Like maybe just a genius level player is going to be able to boost their decks to power levels. And I mean, if you're asking specifically about how it affects the secondary market, I think that's a very small effect that the power levels, the secondary market is exactly that. It's secondary to the actual market and to what's really important. But if you're asking how it affects the secondary market, that's the only thing that really comes to mind, is that maybe really good players will be able to boost their decks that are really just average or maybe above average and sell them, advertising their power level.
Well, what I also think is it might allow some decks that on first glance don't actually look like good decks, right, to actually turn out, like to show that they are good decks, right? Because if you look at a deck, sometimes you look at a deck and you're like, I don't see how this works. But if that deck is a high power level deck, it has some proven capability to win games at a pretty high level too. I mean, I don't know how the power levels are going to work, but I believe that it has something to do with the scale of event you've played at. I think you probably will see in the future, like on YouTube, power level X deck for sale, X dude. Like I could definitely see something like that starting to happen. But
for sure,
yeah. The other, any other thoughts on the Time of Triumph before we move on to the Vault Tour?
Not really. It's an interesting idea that that they. I guess in other games that I've experienced, specifically with FFG, they just have like, okay, season 2 kit, but I don't know if they're going to have these time of titles to just the different seasons. Is that what's going on here? I don't know if I'm fully following.
My question
is
there a name generator for this too?
Celine is also she's naming everything. She's like naming the sets, she's naming the everything. Eventually the rules will just be generated by Celine.
She's very ominous.
It's fantastic.
She's just gonna take over.
So Kokajin in the chat,
Keyforge.
Kokajin in the chat actually asked, I know about chains, but I didn't know about the power of the deck. What is the power level? They cover that in the Crucible cast, which was FFG's official YouTube cast that they do every so often. But what it basically is as you win events and your deck performs well, your deck is going to gain a power level. And then they kind of brush over the idea. They don't go too into detail, which is why it's hard for us to get into specifics yet. But it seems like maybe some events will expect a certain level of power level deck to be entered, to be used in that event. And I also believe that your power level, your deck, it goes up based on the power level of decks it's facing. So it's to encourage you to kind of seek out better competitors out there to like improve your deck, which the obvious way to face higher power level decks is to go to bigger events. And so it all kind of works together. I imagine, this is me kind of guessing at this point, but I imagine it might work something like the ranking system you see in online games like Overwatch or MOBAs and that kind of thing. So we'll see how it works. We're all kind of discovering together, but it definitely, I think, is going to have an impact. I guess it will have an impact on the secondary market at least, and really matter, which is kind of a cool idea that you can raise the monetary value of your deck by performing well. That's something I don't think we've ever truly seen exist. I guess when you're playing a Magic or something, you're raising the monetary value of individual cards, but you own those cards already if you're playing that deck. So yeah. Cool.
I wonder
also,
just on that topic, I wonder if, did they say specifically that that's the only way a deck will gain power level, by competing? Or is a deck that has cards X, Y, and Z in it automatically going to be a power 4 deck?
I need to go back and rewatch that, but I do believe it was brought up in the context of competition.
Okay.
But I'm not 100% sure. Plus, as we learned interviewing Brad, it seems like some of the stuff they're still figuring out as they go along, right? Yeah. So who knows? There may not be a definitive answer on your question as it stands.
Yeah, I wonder what that means for like more remote communities. Like, for myself here, there's at best, if we have a really successful Keyforge event, I assume we'd get 6 people, 8, 10 would be amazing. And so how in the world am I ever going to get my deck's power level up?
You're going to have to travel, man. You're going to have to travel. A-Wing Squadron in chat says it's only from wins that your power level goes up. So thanks for fact checking that on for us. Cool. The second big news article was the Vault Tour, which is happening. At least there are 3 already announced. One is in the Netherlands on March 15th. One is at Emerald City Comic-Con right here in Seattle for me on March 14th. And then Adepticon on March 27th. And there are some important things they covered about these Vault Tours. I think these are run by Cascade Games, which excitingly, we're going to be interviewing them on our next episode. So I'm sure we'll be able to kind of get into some details about what these look like with them. But you are able to redeem the Amber Shards that you've earned for prizes. I assume that's the prize wall that we're talking about there. Mm-hmm. So you can literally, I think you probably will just be able to walk up and just use your Amber Shards to get prizes, which is, that alone is incentive to show up. And then a winner, it's kind of weird because they don't say the winner. They say a winner of the event will get a free flight and lodging for a future event. They aren't even clear about what event the free flight and lodging is for.
So my suspicion with that is that they, in normal circumstances, they would say it's for Worlds, but since they've already said that there won't be a World Championship for this year, it's probably going to be for the whatever the Keyforge celebration ends up being for 2019, and then going forward, Vault Tours will offer flights to Worlds because that's a pretty common Fantasy Flight prize.
Yeah, I think that's a good insight. Yeah, which especially for those people who are going to be at the Vault Tour in Netherlands, that's a real win. So that's pretty awesome. And then top earners at these events, and so it seems specific to these events. Top earners at these events will get points to get invited to Worlds, which we know that Worlds is invite only for Keyforge. It seems like all the games are kind of going that direction. So this is how you get those invites, perform well at these events, the Vault Tours, and you can go to Worlds, yeah. So what do you guys think about the Vault Tours and these events and what's going on with them?
Well, I like that it feeds into World and feeds into higher levels of competition. Having gone to Destiny Worlds last year and knowing that you had to earn your way, well, not everybody had to earn their way there.
Uh-oh. Did we lose him?
Seems like we may have.
Okay, sorry. Yeah,
Maybe.
but
I think Audrey had a point though.
Go ahead, Audrey.
Well, I was going to bring up the fact that Matt was kind of touching on it just a little bit earlier, about how being in a more rural area where you're not really, really close to a lot of the bigger cities, it's like I'm hoping that we're seeing a lot of these vault tours everywhere instead of just like huge major cities, like especially across the US. Like I hope that I don't have to go all the way out to New York or something to go see one of these. Like I can hopefully just pop over to Denver or up to Omaha or something and just not have to worry about it too much. Like that's a little bit more doable than like a 16-20 hour drive. So we drive everywhere in where I'm from. So
yeah.
That's what I'm
a
hoping.
really good point. I wonder too if maybe we shouldn't necessarily judge based on year one what that might look like versus going forward into like year two. Like they're still kind of booting this up. I know a lot of people here in Seattle are upset because Emerald City Comic-Con is already sold out. And so if you don't have a badge to get to Emerald City Comic-Con and you just heard about this vault tour being there, you don't have a way to attend and be part of it. So that's a frustrating thing for a lot of people out in this area. One thing I can't encourage, if you are a Keyforge, especially if you want to get into the competitive level of Keyforge, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for you to be following Cascade Games on Facebook and Twitter and all their places, because a lot of the news for these kinds of events aren't necessarily, I mean, they're mentioned a little bit by FFG OP, but the other place they are more commonly heavily promoted is by Cascade. And so if you, for example, Cascade mentioned, they didn't say what it was, but they did say there was going to be a big Keyforge event at Emerald City Comic-Con all the way back in October, which meant that there was some, like you knew something was coming. It still sucks that like we didn't know what it was that was coming, right? So, but hopefully some of that will also be ironed out, because if you think all the way back in October, Keyforge hadn't even launched yet. So we don't even know what Cascade was even allowed to talk about yet at that time. But anyways, that's definitely a thing. Hopefully the Vault Tours, they start to be able to get that information out more clearly and people can get to events before they're sold out. And I agree, Audrey, hopefully they're in more places so as many people as possible can attend.
I believe they have also announced that there will be one at Gen Con. So that's something to look forward to for people that are going to that.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. What are you going to do, Chris? Oh, he left in that moment. He was like, I don't want to go on the record for saying I'm playing Keyforge at Gen Con. My Game of Thrones friends might look down upon me.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. All right, cool. So that was kind of the big news. Actually, we kind of covered that pretty quickly. Any other thoughts on any of the news? Any other news that maybe I missed? Anybody in chat even who's like, hey, did you see this going on? Anybody?
There's in terms of events, on February 23rd, I'm going to be traveling down to Toronto for an FFG Premier Play event held by Cascade Games. So for anybody who lives in Ontario within a driving distance of Toronto, it's about a 4.5, almost 5-hour drive south for me.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm 5 hours north of Toronto. So, and which actually I drove it yesterday for a Destiny regional, so which might be explain why I'm a little might seem a little tired tonight, but yeah, so I'm going to be heading back down to Toronto in about a month for this Fantasy Flight Games Premier Play. They're going to be having X-Wing, Destiny, Legend of the Five Rings, and Keyforge. So I'm going to play in at least 2 or 3 of the Destiny events, and I'm going to try to sneak in as much Keyforge as I can as well. I don't know, and this is one of those events where I don't like, where does that fit in to this pyramid of events in terms of Keyforge?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like, what is it? Am I going to be scanning?
You should definitely save that question for when we have Cascade on, and we can ask them.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
Cool.
I have no idea what I'm going to for in terms of Keyforge, but I'm going and I'm going to be playing.
He's driving 5 hours. Doesn't know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Yeah, so that's kind of the news, and sweet, a lot going on. I'm excited that we're starting to get those details. It'll be nice. It will be nice to be a year from now where everything is just like we know what's going on. I mean, I don't necessarily guarantee that with Fantasy Flight Games, but it'll be nice to have some established routine. So I'm looking forward to that. So for those of you who are listening on the podcast, we are about to break into chat with Brad Andrews, which is he's the lead developer on Keyforge. I think you're really going to enjoy that. So, and then we'll be back in just 1 minute. Well, just after that to talk about the big new rules update. So thanks for listening to Cast of the Archons. All right. Welcome back. Hopefully you enjoyed that interview with Brad Andrews. That was a pretty fun interview to do. I'm glad, Matt, you asked about his favorite deck. That was some good stuff that he was talking about there. And did anybody look up Biplop?
Blip, yeah, I figured out how to spell it, so I was able to find it. And yeah,
and spoiler, what is it?
It just says soon. Which thanks for nothing, Brad.
Yeah, you know the flavor text and not the name of the card. I really like that. Actually, that was. I'm like,
I guess soon is better than if it said like never or something.
Yeah. If it said like not happening,
it could have been worse.
Nice try.
We are in the time of discovery right now, so I mean, come on.
No, you've got it all mixed up. Dawn of Discovery is past. We did Time of Triumph.
Time of Triumph.
Can't combine the two, Audrey.
What
are you mean?
Time of Triumph doesn't end till the 22nd.
Now I know the truth. Audrey,
Discovery doesn't end till the 22nd.
We're still 2 more days of discovering, Brad.
Yeah.
All right. 2 more days.
We're just discovering the flavor text. That's what we're discovering.
And we did get Brad to say he's going to come back for another interview once the new set drops. So that'll be really exciting to have him on to talk about all the secret stuff that we can't talk about yet. So that'll be exciting. If you're listening, you're like, why didn't you ask this question? It's because we already knew he wouldn't answer that question. So that's why that happened. Cool. So new rules update. Kind of like happened, right? Like I didn't see a big announcement or anything. It just like appeared on the internet and one person was like, hey, I think there's a new rules update, and it spread like wildfire. And there was some pretty big changes there. 1 or 2 in particular that I think everybody was talking about. The first one was biomatrix backup. What changed? First of all, can somebody explain to me what biomatrix backup did at first and how it changed for how it works now? Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so biomatrix backup is an upgrade that got you an amber for playing it. You would put it on one of your characters or creatures, and then when that creature died, the card text said you may, when this creature, I guess it was a destroyed effect, and it said when this creature is destroyed, you may put it into your archives. And then what ended up happening, just to clarify for those who may not be 100% sure what we're talking about, is that one of the major rules of Keyforge is that only the active player would ever make a decision. So the fact that I destroyed your character with a biomatrix backup on it said may, that means that a decision had to be made. And the only person who's able to make a decision is the active player. So therefore, if I killed your character on my turn with biomatrix backup on it, I could choose not to allow you to archive your character when it was destroyed. Did I explain that properly?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just say, by the way, that it seems like every time I would be teaching somebody the game, they would have biomatrix backup. I don't know why, but it just seemed like they always had it. And every time they would play it, there was this pit in my stomach of like, I'm going to have to explain how this works, and they are not going to be happy about that.
Yeah, and I think it was very, very clear to everybody that that was never the intention of the card. It was never the spirit of the card was never for that to be the case.
Well, even Brad said that in the interview, right? So
yeah, exactly. And Richard Garfield himself has said that in some chat rooms that
he was on Board Game Geek.
That's the one. Yeah. So he was on the Board Game Geek. What do you call that? Threads or forum. Thank you. And did I mention I was tired? He was on the Board Game Geek forums and mentioned exactly that it was not in the spirit of the card. It was not the intent of the card. And it was unfortunate that this was the ruling, but in order to maintain the the spirit of the game and to maintain rules, that they had to make this this decision that Biomatrix backup, if that creature was destroyed on your opponent's turn, your opponent would make the decision, which I thought at the time, without an errata to the actual card, was the right decision, because you don't want to go start making rules changes to the whole game due to one card. And so it was great to see that this week when they dropped the new rules update, that they errated the card specifically so that it said I got
rid of the word may, basically.
Is that what it was?
Now you have to put it into the archive, and that takes away any kind of choice in the decision. So it can happen on your opponent's turn, which, yes, as you said, is clearly the intention of the card.
So a few of my decks got way better this week.
Oh yeah, I bet. Nice. Biomatrix backup, I'm sure, improved.
That's exciting.
Big time.
Yeah. And then the other big change everybody was talking about, and we've talked about this a little bit on the cast, is the lockout mechanic of Pit Lord and Restring Gut. The fact that I have to say this every time on the cast is just it's gut wrenching. Restring Guntus. Yes. I'll read this one out loud. So it's actually part of the FAQ. It says, I have the card Pit Lord in play, and my opponent plays the card Restringuntis and chooses House Dis. What happens when I try to declare my house on my next turn? And the answer is, on your next turn during the choose a house step, you will be in a position where you must choose House Dis because of the Pit Lord, but also cannot choose House Dis because of Restringuntis. Cannot effects have precedence over must effects. Thus, you cannot choose Dis. You may still choose either one of your other houses, though. So what was the big change in that ruling from the way it used to work?
So it used to be that you just were not allowed to play a house on your turn. Your turn was dead, basically. There wasn't anything that you could do, and you essentially just skipped an entire turn. Which
not just turn, right? It locked down the game, correct?
Essentially, yeah, because it was just a lasting effect, I believe. So it was not fun. I am fortunate enough that I never encountered that myself, but I know for a lot of people it was a huge thorn in the side, and something that I'm pretty happy that it got fixed, because that was obviously something that was a huge problem. Especially with not being fully clear on what needs to be happening in the game, and I'm pretty happy with the change, and that they're willing to talk about it. Like, hey, okay, sorry that this is happening, but this is how you need to be playing the game. So I'm cool with it. I didn't have a deck with
most people in the community are cool with it. Probably the people who aren't cool with it are the people who spent a bunch of money on a lockdown deck.
That's what I can
mentioning any names there, but that would be one group that's not cool with it. What I also think is interesting is, and we talked about this maybe episode 2, Chris, was it, that Richard Garfield had actually gone on the record as saying that he intended for it to work this way in the game, and that this lockout was supposed to be a thing that could happen in the game. So we're kind of seeing here a separation, whereas with Biomatrix backup, they're making it work the way Richard wanted it to work. But with the lockout, with Pit Lord Restringuntis lockout, they're actually changing it from the way that he intended. And I've even heard that maybe in playtesting, this was a bit of contention between playtesters. So I think it's good, though, because it shows, it shows that they're willing to listen to the community and adapt to what really you don't want to bend to the community too much, but you do want the game to be healthy and to be in a pleasurable place for people. And so I think they made the right decision as well. I agree with you, Audrey. Coke and Jean says that there's one of these decks that's sold for $12,000 on eBay. So
I'm
that
hoping
happened.
It's 1,200, not 12,000. But
yeah,
my goodness.
probably closer to 1,200.
That happened. So
even still, 1,200 is a lot.
Oh yeah, that's brutal.
Yes.
But I have to agree that this is a really positive change
Sucks
overall.
to be that guy.
I didn't think that sort of lockout needed to exist. Although it is important to note that Restringuntus can still lock a player out if they have the unfortunate situation of having a hand of all one house and no way to kill Restringuntus on the board. They can still be locked out of the game by that guy, just not with the Pit Lord combo.
Got it. Yeah, no, these cards are definitely still, they do a thing.
Yeah, and it's not yeah, absolutely. And it's still not just the Pit Lord combo either, right? There's that, and I think this is the deck probably that sold for what I assume is $1,200. Is the Witch of the Eye, Dominator Bauble, Control the Weak, Restringuntus. I don't think I'm saying that right either. Combo, right? Where you pick Dis, you play Restringuntus, you choose a Sanctum, you Dominator Bauble for Witch of the Eye to bring your Control the Weak back, and then you also choose Sanctum, and locking that player out. And then the following turn, you do the exact same thing: Dominator Bauble, Witch of the Eye, Control the Weak, and then they're just locked out for the whole game.
Yep.
But again, that's another one of those ones where it's got a lot of moving pieces, and it's
every time you add another card.
And it's a card on the same side of the board. It's not a situation where I played a card and then my opponent had a card I didn't even know about that immediately locked me out of the game completely. Which is this situation.
Right.
And you can't plan for that either.
Which I have had happen.
Yep. Yeah, it's not fun.
No.
Chris, are there any other rules updates you wanted to make sure we highlighted?
Yeah, there's a couple small ones they mentioned. They clarified how stun rules work in that previously, if your opponent had only one creature on the board and it was already stunned, and you played the Brobnar guy that enters play and stuns a character.
Smash.
Smash, yeah. You had to stun one of your own characters because you couldn't restun that character, and that's no longer the case. They've made it so you can target a stun creature with a stun effect. It just won't have any additional effect.
Yeah, that's a big one.
They cleared that up.
Feels right.
And then they also clarified and changed the first turn of the game rule, which I found kind of interesting. Previously, the rule stated that on the first turn of the game, the first player could only play one card, and it could not be modified in any fashion. They've since added that it can be modified by card effects, and so Phase Shift allows you to play two cards out of your hand on the first turn now. You can play the Phase Shift and then play another non-Logos card that turn.
That is important. That's a good catch. All right.
And I think Wild Wormhole.
Well, Wild Wormhole always worked because it wasn't the
out of your hand
card.
Out of hand.
It was play or discard from hand. So
off of deck, you were okay.
Off of your deck. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Kokujin says also Shadow Self with armor is pretty nice. So cool. All right. Those, I think we'll do a deeper dive into those rules on another week when we don't have a bunch of stuff, interviews and everything going on. But it was just surprising to see. Do you like the way they're doing these live updates? Do you like how this is going on? What do you think this means for the game?
I was surprised that there was no more robust article about it. I was expecting that somebody, when it came out in the Facebook group, which is where most people saw it, was the large 9,000 person Facebook group. I was expecting that was a situation where somebody had been kind of data mining the Fantasy Flight website and had come across the link and had just posted it early, and that we were going to get something from Fantasy Flight that said, hey, here's a full article explaining these changes. But we never really got that. We got an announcement from them eventually that had the link to it, but there was no accompanying article that clarified these or discussed them at all. And so that was
right. Yep. That's a good point. Yeah, definitely. I would like to hear in the future, so it's always nice to hear the thought process behind the changes. It also helps in the conversations. It helps smooth over some of the people who maybe feel bad about some of the changes that were made. we are mostly positive about these changes, but I've definitely seen, for example, on Twitter, I got into a big fight on Twitter with a lot of people who liked the way the biomatrix backup worked before. And so they were really upset.
They're
honestly.
wrong.
I ain't calling anybody out, but they were upset by this change. They said it was a very good card for teaching players how the game worked, and I kind of saw their point of view. But to be honest, every time I was teaching somebody and they played biomatrix backup, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to explain how this works, and they're gonna be upset. And it never failed. They're always like, that's stupid, and I was like, I hope they don't hate Keyforge because of one card, like, because when you're teaching a new player a game, that first game, it can decide whether they play a second. It's huge. Yeah. So I'm actually really glad with the change. Cool. Chris, dare I ask? We
actually have some listener submitted ones this week. We've gotten a couple from people on Twitter and Facebook. So I have a couple of those and then a couple of my own.
All right. So we're going to get to some crazy Archon deck names. Everybody get ready.
So from Twitter user Jedi Geek Girl, she wants us to. This one kind of scares me. The leader that educates killers.
Oh,
I don't think I want my leaders educating killers, but it's out there.
Oh my gosh, that one might not make it into the app.
I'm curious if that one's banned or not. There was some discussion about whether or not that one was one of the naughty ones or not, but it doesn't sound very pleasant.
The naughty deck, the leader that educates killer. Yes.
And then on the plus side of things, we have someone who is fighting against the patriarchy. That's Kent, the naysayer of the patriarchy. So Kent is against the patriarchy, and that's from Ryan F on Facebook.
Keyforge's version of a Gillette commercial right there. That's fantastic. That patriarchy is in there. I mean, hopefully it continues to work in a positive way. It could also, there could be some decks where they're like, ooh, we might need to pull that one. Yeah. That's fantastic. And then you have some for us?
I do have a couple as well. We have a great military leader, Sergeant Obsidian Tree, and it's important to note that this second part is all one word. Sergeant Obsidian Tree, McReady to kill you. So apparently that's something you can get on the dollar menu or something. McReady to kill you.
McReady to kill you.
McReady to kill you.
That might be my favorite. That might be my favorite.
And I did look on the app.
I have a McReady to kill you, please?
McReady to kill you. There's at least 14 decks with McReady to kill you.
What?
So you can switch that up yourself.
14 decks that all say that. That's crazy. Celine, what are you doing?
Yeah. Then we have a real pyromancer on our hands here. The boy who befriends fire. Lots of it. So he really likes the fire. There's a lot of fire there.
Oh my gosh! Whoa!
I'm still fantastic. Ready to kill you.
Wow.
That's great.
Hopefully the teacher that teaches killers doesn't meet the boy who likes fire. Yeah, hopefully those two decks never meet, because it might not go well for us.
Yeah, they'll be ready to kill you.
Yeah. That's
there seems to be a theme. There's a theme around these decks this week.
That's right.
Yes, that's fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot of murder and death. Man, you're getting dark. It's getting dark there, Chris. Woo. All right. Well, if you have some really good Archon deck name that you want to submit, let us know. Everybody's been really good. They're posting on Twitter with like the full picture of the deck. And then Twitter always cuts off the part that shows the name unless I click on the picture, because I'm the person who mostly watches the Twitter feed. And so when anybody submits, all I do is I tag Chris and Matt and say, you guys look at this, so that we can, I like being surprised every week. It's fun to be surprised. So you can definitely tag us of any Archon deck names that you have found that you really, really enjoy. We are at Cast Archons on Twitter. You can also email us at castofthearchons@gmail.com. You might want to like put a little spoiler mention in there so that if I'm the one checking the email, I don't see it. But yeah, so cool. Good job, sir. Well done. Matt, you going to do in 2 weeks?
Sure.
Can you rise up to the level of McReady to kill you?
Those are huge McShoes to fill.
It's so good. All right. So we're gonna close up this episode. I think we hit exactly 2 hours here. So remember, Chris, you're like, we're just gonna do a short little simple podcast.
Oh, the good old days.
Oh, the good old days. I just want to tell the community how much I've really enjoyed the support, how much I love chatting with everybody. We're now in like the Keyforge Discord. We're around. So, and then I think that Matt has been doing a great job with more live content. He did a really sweet review of one of his decks that you definitely want to go back and check out. I just thought was great. And I think we're planning for him to also do some interviews with other people talking about their favorite deck or a deck that's really, really good. So if you think you have a deck, if you have a deck that you're taking to your local store and you're just crushing everybody with it and you want to brag about it live with Matt, hit us up, email us at castthearchons@gmail.com or send us a direct message on Twitter.
Yeah, there'll be more, set that up. Video stuff coming up. As I mentioned earlier, I had a Destiny regional yesterday, and so the last couple of weeks I've been super focused on testing and tweaking and working on that.
Tell us how you did. That's what we want to hear.
I finished top 4, so I did okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was happy with that result. I guess I went to the store that I won the regional at last year, so I was defending my title. So I came a little bit short on defending my title, but it was a ton of fun. Black Knight Games in Hamilton, Ontario hosted an amazing event. And they actually hosted a Keyforge event on Thursday that I went down a little bit early to participate in with a friend. So we did a reversal format. That was super fun. My friend and I that traveled together came in first and second. So that was a ton of fun. So thanks to Black Knight Games for hosting a couple of really
that
fun
sounds
events.
Great.
But all that being said, now I can refocus a little bit and hopefully do some more video content for you guys for Keyforge.
Chris, Audrey, any last thoughts you guys want to put out there before we close? No?
Just thanks for tuning in, and I'm glad that Keyforge has such a talkative community, that there's so many people in this already. And I'm actually really happy that the creators of Keyforge are actually engaging with the community as well. Maybe not nearly as much as we are wanting, because who doesn't want to talk face to face with the lead designers like on a daily basis and get everything as much as we possibly can? But they need to keep those secrets, because if we just knew everything all at once, then it's like, okay, we're done. We're going to move on to the next thing. So
absolutely.
I am really happy with how this is moving forward, and I hope that it keeps up all this momentum and that they can keep making something that's just as insane as this. And I'm just really happy to be a part of it myself as well. So it's been fun.
I love your enthusiasm, Audrey. Keep it up. I love it. So thank you all for listening. Subscribe to us, please, on YouTube. We passed that 100 person mark, so now we're able to do a lot of really cool things, like make YouTube videos live on our phones, and we actually have like a real URL on YouTube and those sorts of things. So I really appreciate everybody who helped out with that. Please follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. I'm pretty active actually on Twitter, so that can be a real easy way to get a hold of us and talk to us. And give us a good review, please, on your iTunes or whatever podcast app you use, because that helps move us up. I just like being up to the level that when people are searching for Keyforge, they find us. And so a really easy way to help with that is just by giving us a positive review. And then next episode, we are planning to have an interview with Cascade Games. I don't know who all from Cascade is coming. I have some ideas, but we're going to interview them and kind of talk about some of the events they're running up ahead. If you have questions about that, definitely hit us up so we could be asking them directly. I know a lot of the guys over at Cascade, they do not mind one bit having those direct questions asked. And then also we may be interviewing Emma Handy. Is that correct, Chris? You want to talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, Emma is a Magic professional and a writer for Star City Games, which is one of the prominent Magic communities and strategy sites. And she's been really enthusiastic about Keyforge and has been tweeting a lot about it and going to a couple tournaments and stuff. So I wanted to have her on and get her perspective about the game and how different it is from Magic and why it scratches a different itch, why it's cool that she's able to do both. So I don't know if that'll be next week or next episode exactly, but we will do our best.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you all for listening and watching, and we will see you in about 2 weeks. So talk to you later. Play some Keyforge.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.